turn now to myth number 6. The 9/11 attacks came as a surprise to the Bush administration. Nothing is more essential to the official story than this idea. About 10 months after 9/11, FBI Director Robert Mueller said, "To this day, we have found no one in the United States except the actual hijackers who knew of the plot." There is much evidence, however, that counts against this claim. One type of evidence involves an extraordinarily high volume of put options purchased in the 3 days prior to 9/11. To buy put options for a particular company is to bet that its stock price will go down. These extraordinary purchases included two and only two airlines, United and American, the two airlines used in the attacks. They also included Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, which occupied 22 stories of the World Trade Center. The price of these shares did, of course, plummet after 9/11, resulting in enormous profits for the purchasers. These unusual purchases, as the San Francisco Chronicle said, raised suspicions that the investors had advanced knowledge of the strikes. It would appear, in other words, that those who made the purchases knew that United and American airliners were going to be used in attacks on the World Trade Center. The 9/11 Commission tried to show these suspicions to be unfounded. It claimed, for example, that the purchases for United Airlines do not show anyone other than Al-Qaeda had foreknowledge because 95% of these options were purchased by a single U.S.-based institutional investor with no conceivable ties to Al-Qaeda. But the Commission thereby simply begged the question at issue, which is whether some organization other than Al-Qaeda was involved in the planning. I'm not making this up. Also, the Commission ignored the other crucial point, which is that U.S. intelligence agency closely monitored the stock market, looking for any anomalies that might provide clues
Myth
to
number
untoward events. Therefore, regardless of who orchestrated the attacks, the U.S. government would have had intelligence suggesting that United and American airliners were to be used for attacks on the World Trade Center in the near future. Further evidence of advanced knowledge is shown by the behavior of President Bush and his Secret Service agents at the photo op at the school in Florida that morning. According to the official story, when Bush was first told that a plane had struck one of the Twin Towers, he dismissed the incident as a horrible accident, which meant that they could go ahead with the photo op. News of the second strike, however, would have indicated, assuming that the strikes were unexpected, that terrorists were using planes to attack high-value targets. And what could have been a higher value target than the President of the United States?
Authorize the doctrines and
his location at the school had been more highly publicized.
Of imperial
Therefore, the Secret Service agents should have feared that a hijacked airliner might have been bearing down on the school at that very minute, ready to crash into it. It is standard procedure for the Secret Service to rush the President to a safe location whenever there is any sign of danger. And yet these agents allowed the President to remain another half hour at the school, even permitting him to deliver an address on TV, thereby announcing to the world that he was still at the school. Would not this behavior be explainable only if the head of the Secret Service detail knew that the planned attacks did not include an attack on the President? The 9/11 Commission, of course, did not ask this question. It was content to report that the Secret Service told us they did not think it imperative for the President to run out the door. Maintaining decorum, in other words, was more important than protecting the President's life. Can anyone seriously believe that the highly trained Secret Service would act this way in a situation of genuine danger? A third example. A Pentagon spokesperson, in explaining why the Pentagon was not evacuated before it was struck, claimed that the Pentagon was simply not aware that this aircraft was coming our way. The 9/11 Commission claimed that there was no warning about an unidentified aircraft heading towards Washington until 9:36, and hence only 1 or 2 minutes before the Pentagon was struck. But this claim is contradicted by Secretary of Transportation Norman Mineta's testimony about an episode that occurred in the Presidential Emergency Operations Center under the White House. In open testimony to the 9/11 Commission itself, Mineta said,
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
Mineta said that this conversation occurred at 9:25 or 9:26, hence many minutes before the Pentagon was struck. This example gives us one of the clearest examples of the fact that the Zelikow-led 9/11 Commission cannot be trusted. Having claimed that there was no knowledge that an aircraft was approaching the Pentagon until the last minute or so, it simply omitted Mineta's testimony to the contrary. Then, to rule out the possibility that the episode Mineta had reported could have occurred, it claimed that Cheney did not even arrive down at the Presidential Emergency Operations Center until almost 10 o'clock, hence about 20 minutes after the Pentagon was struck. But this claim, besides contradicting Mineta's eyewitness testimony that Cheney was already there when Mineta arrived at 9:20, also contradicts all other reports as to when Cheney had arrived there, including a report by Cheney himself. In sum, having compared the official stories about the put options, the Secret Service, and Mineta's testimony, we can reject as a myth the idea that the attacks were unexpected. However, even if the attacks had been unexpected, should they not have been prevented? This brings us to myth number 7.